What's up, Coach Colin Castello here with ShotMechanics Basketball, and today I'm going to teach you how to get unstoppable footwork with your pivot. All right, a lot of players don't realize exactly how important pivoting is to the game, and they don't really even understand that most of the time if you can have good footwork and good pivoting, you're going to score more points right away. I mean, just look at the best players in the NBA. Most of the great scorers have awesome footwork and can pivot effectively to get out of space and to score, right? So today what we're going to do is we're going to give you a few keys to that kind of pivots in the footwork, and we're going to give you some drills to make sure we ingrain it into your habits. That way it comes out in the actual games. Now, before we jump into it, I want to give you a free copy of my 7-day shooting challenge. This is 7 days worth of workouts. They're going to increase your shooting percentage, and it's going to help you hit more shots in game. That's how powerful it is. So all you got to do is click the button above or the link in the description down below to get a free copy now. I'm going to send it directly to your email inbox, and you can get training today. So make sure you hit that. But the very first thing we're going to talk about is being able to pivot with both feet. Now, growing up, most of the time, players really work on one foot. If they're right-handed, they work on their left. If they're left-handed, they work on their right. So it feels really natural for most players to pivot on their off foot, right? But as you get older and you start developing, you really want to make sure that you are working on both feet. If you can pivot in any situation out of any footwork, it makes you that much more dynamic and it makes you that much harder to stop offensively. So the thing we really want to think about is no matter where I'm catching in my situation, I always want to try to catch 2 feet in the air, if at all possible, and I want to be able to pivot either direction. So if I catch, I can pivot on my right. If I catch, I can pivot on my left. So now what we're going to do is we're going to walk you through some drills to help you out. All right, so the first drill we got to help your pivot series is we're going the reverse pivot series. So you start facing away from the basket, spin the ball to yourself, catch with 2 feet in the air, just like that. Now we're going to plant on our outside foot. So if I'm shooting on the right side of the floor, I'm going to plant on my left foot, opposite on the other. So I'm planting on my outside foot, I'm going to reverse pivot around following my behind. See that? As I come through, my behind's coming through, ball's following around. Now reverse pivot's great because it clears space and it gets the defender to move out of your way a little bit. So in this series, we're going 3 reps. First one, we're reverse pivot and we're ripping through for a pull-up jump shot, just like that. We're going to come back, spin the ball to ourselves, reverse pivot on the same foot. Now we're going to go reverse pivot, jab into a 3-point jump shot, right? So we go 1 dribble pull-up, 3-point jump shot. And then the next one, we're doing the same thing, spin it to ourselves, catch, reverse pivot, jab, cross, 1 bounce, pull-up jumper, right? So we're pretending like we're rocking the defense out of the way, exploding the opposite. On that one, it's really important that as I reverse pivot and I jab, I keep this left foot or this pivot foot down all the way until the ball comes out of my hand, then that foot can come up. If the foot comes up early, it's going to be travel. You'll probably get called for it every time. So once I get my 3 reps on this side, I'm going to come to my opposite side, spin the ball to myself just like before, 2 feet in the air. But now I'm on the opposite side, so I'm going to pivot on my right foot reverse pivot. So I'm coming through, I'm going rip, 1 dribble pull up, coming back out. I'm going jab, load, shot. Third one, I'm coming through, reverse pivot on my right still. I'm going jab, 1 dribble middle, pull up jumper. Again, really work on selling those pivots and sticking it into the ground because we're working on that dynamic reverse pivot to help you score more. All right, so the next thing we want to think about is using your pivot to create space, to get the defender to back off you, give you more space to operate. So with a pivot, you can do different things with the basketball that's going to make it more effective. So if I'm looking to pivot or to face up here, maybe we're running offense and I catch and I got a defender up here on my hip, I can use a pivot to create this space, right? Now generally there's 3 levels of pivoting. There's a low pivot, so as I come through, I'm ripping the ball low, just like that. There's a mid, so as I come through, I can rip it mid, kind of more across my chest or my stomach. And then there's a high pivot where I come through, I can clear space with my elbows and come through that direction where the ball's moving above my head, almost in like a rainbow motion, right? Now the key is you can use these different pivot situations depending on how the defense is playing you, right? And depending on how tall the defender is, you know, how big they are, how strong they are, all that sort of good stuff. But it's great because anytime you're pivoting, you can find a gap, right? If they're pressuring me high and their hands are all up high here, I probably want to pivot low, just like that. If I'm facing up and they've got a low hand maybe right here, they're guarding a crossover, that's maybe when I want to pivot and rip across the middle. If both hands are low and maybe they're really bodying me really hard, that's a great time to pivot high because these elbows are going to come through and they're going to clear some space because if you don't move out of the way, you might catch an elbow, right? So the key and the idea is no matter what foot I'm pivoting on, no matter what situation, I can use it to get space to create the defender to get away from me. That way I've got room to shoot, dribble, score, pass, whatever it is. So a lot of times people underutilize the pivot for space, especially in like a press situation or transition where they get caught up. So think about, you can use your pivot, create some space from the defender. All right, so to work on these 3 levels of pivoting, we're gonna do some form shooting. That way we're getting our jumper on ice, and at the same time we're working on the pivot in a controlled environment. So we're gonna start down here on the right block. You're gonna face away from the hoop. We're still gonna work on that reverse pivot like we did in the last drill. But we're gonna spin the ball to ourselves, and we're gonna reverse pivot on our outside foot just like before. But now we're gonna work on our 3 levels. So the first pivot, I'm gonna get a low rip through. The second pivot, I'm gonna get a mid rip through. And the third one, I'm gonna get a high rip through. After each one, I'm loading my hips and shooting the little 2-handed form jump shot. So I spin it to myself, catch, low rip, shot goes up. Then I reset. Catch, mid rip, jab, shot goes up. Third one, catch, high rip, shot goes up. Again, the idea is I'm working on moving my body this direction, getting space, loading my hips into my shot. That's the key. We're going low rip 1, mid rip 2, high rip 3. Once I get 3 shots up, I'm gonna go to the opposite side, spin the ball to myself, just like before. Now we're pivoting on our opposite foot. Again, low rip first. Second one, we're going mid rip across the chest here. Third one, we're going high rip, clearing space, load up into your shot. Again, we're working on a controlled environment, getting that perfect form every time. All right, so the next main key that can help you with pivoting is to think about you can make multiple pivots or more than one pivot. So a lot of times players kind of assume and they just get used to catching and doing one pivot, and if they don't have anything, then they're done, right? But the great thing about pivoting is as long as that foot stays down, you can pivot as much as you want. If you watch a lot of the great scorers, they get a lot of really good opportunities out of double or triple pivots, meaning they might come through, they might pivot, pivot, pivot if they're attacking, or they might come in, up fake pivot, step through for the finish, right? I can do this for at least 5 seconds if I'm being guarded, and it doesn't matter as long as this pivot foot stays down, right? So what we're gonna do is we're gonna work on a little bit of post footwork to help you get that double pivot down and score around the basket. All right, so for this drill, we're gonna attack from the 3-point line and work on a pivot situation when we get towards the hoop. So the very first one, we're gonna spin it to ourselves just like this. We're gonna catch, we're gonna attack from the 3-point line, and as we get kind of close to the block on the outside, we're gonna do what we call a half whirl pivot, meaning I'm gonna pound the basketball, plant my inside foot, and I'm gonna do essentially like a half spin move, right? So as I come through, I'm planting, stopping my motion, and then I'm coming back around for a jumper. So this is a great double pivot situation, right? As I come through, I'm going 1 pivot, 2 pivot to get that space. Normally on this move, I sell them to the inside. They go flying that way, come back around, right? Once I get my shot, I'm gonna come back out and do the next one. Now what's great about this double pivot move is we're shimmying them one direction, going back the opposite. So the big key is to really sell that first pivot and then pivot the second one nice and hard. All right, so the next move, we're doing the exact same series to start, but we're adding a 3rd pivot into the deal. So it's all gonna start the same, spin the ball to yourself, attack, come from the 3-point line. Again, we're going half whirl, 1 pivot, but now we're going 2 more pivots. So I'm going 2nd pivot out, pump fake, 3rd pivot, step through towards the hoop, right? So watch that again. We're going pivot 1, pivot 2, pivot 3. Now the key to this one is if you throw that shot fake, most of the time you got them shook on that first pivot. So as you pivot back around, they're really antsy to close that distance and maybe block a shot. So right here, if we throw this pump fake, they're gonna jump this direction, and we've got a lane to duck under and finish going towards the hoop. The key is you gotta try to get rid of the basketball before that pivot foot comes up though. But this is a great example of using 3 pivots, 1, 2, 3, to get that great look, be super crafty once you get inside the paint. All right, we got another counter for you. We're doing the exact same start. Spin the ball to yourself, rip, attack through. We're starting with that half whirl, pop, 1 pivot, 2 pivot and pump fake to the outside. But now instead of stepping forward, we're going to pretend like they've closed that gap. So we're going to high rip or chest rip across to pivot to the inside, block with the outside shoulder, and finish going towards the middle of the key. So it kind of looks like this. So it's the same thing, but as I half whirl, I'm up, and now instead of stepping towards the basket, I'm ripping over, stepping towards the middle of the floor, finishing going that direction. You shoot with a little fadeaway jumper, little jump hook, whatever it is you want to work on. But the key is, now we're reading the defender. So if they cut me off on this pivot here, I can come back through. Oh, I'm sorry. If they cut me off on this pivot, I can come back through to the middle, right? So the whole key is taking what the defense gives you. And while we're working on these different drills and these different moves, it's gonna help you kind of develop that habit. So if somebody does jump you to the baseline, you'll be able to react. All right, so now we're gonna work on the granddaddy of pivots. We're going 4 pivots on this move. Again, we're building off of the series that we just worked on. So you're spinning to yourself, attacking. Here we go, we're gonna start with that half pivot or half whirl. 1 pivot, 2 pivot pump fake. We're gonna step towards the middle like we just did. 3 pivots, but now they came hard. So we're gonna throw a little ball fake, a little something up like this, and then we're gonna spin, pivot back around, jump shot going back towards the outside. Again, we got 4 pivots going on here. We got 1, we got 2, we got 3, we got 4 coming back through for our jumper, right? The key is be patient with the pivots. You don't have to pop, 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 do it all really fast. You can have a little bit of a cadence, right? Throw a little shimmy, throw a little head fake, throw a little shoulders in there, and it's gonna help sell the deal. Again, with all of these moves, you wanna work on both sides of the floor. That way you get used to pivots no matter what situation you're in. If this video helps you out, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, and then hit the comment section down below and let me know what sort of video you wanna see next. This is a channel for the people, by the people, and I run pretty much everything out for request, so leave it down below and hopefully I'll get to it. And don't forget,